Hamas's announcement that it has dissolved its governing body in Gaza and agreed to transfer authority to a US-backed technocratic committee has been hailed as a major political step. But it leaves the key question of disarmament completely unanswered. Well, this move by Hamas comes under the much-celebrated Gaza ceasefire framework promoted by US President Donald Trump, which envisions the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza, or the NCAG, a Palestinian technocratic body running the enclave instead of Hamas. Now, beyond the headline, we need to understand the kind of words used by Hamas while announcing one of its biggest decisions in the last 20 years. The group said, and listen very carefully, it is dissolving the Government Emergency Committee and other structures that have functioned as a de facto administration since it seized control of Gaza in 2007, presenting the step as a proof that it is ready for a new political phase. But in the same breath, Hamas clarified that the ministries themselves and the staff it appointed would remain in place, and that it would still oversee security and policing in parts of Gaza left under its control after the US brokered truce. Now, at the same time, Trump-appointed Board of Peace insists that the guiding principle for Gaza's future is one authority, one law, and one weapon, meaning all armed forces must come under NCAG's control. Now, with Hamas refusing to hand over its arsenal and maintaining a sort of indirect control over the enclave, it seems the gap between the peace plan and the realities on ground is widening rather than closing. So in today's edition of From the News Desk, we will talk about how Hamas's refusal to give up arms create a new layer of conflict between the headlines of governance change and the reality of who actually keeps the guns. Hamas's decision to dissolve its governing committee in Gaza is being portrayed by the group as a serious step that removes excuses for Israeli pressure and helps ease the administrative transition. Officials from Hamas's media office said all administrative and legal preparations have been completed to allow the NCAG to assume its duty, calling on mediators and the international community to accelerate the committee's entry into Gaza. On paper, the change is definitely significant. The body that oversees ministries for more than a decade is being dismantled, creating space for a new US-backed technocratic structure. But in practice, the announcement looks more like a rebranding exercise than a full handover of power, because the same civil servants and much of the bureaucracy remains in place, and top of all, Hamas retains influence over key levels of the governance. Owing to this, analysts note that this creates a dual reality. Externally, Hamas can claim it is no longer clinging to power and is ready to step aside in favor of technocrats, but internally, it stays embedded in Gaza's institution, most importantly, keeps control of armed men on the street. And this is why many observers, including in Israel, see the move as largely symbolic unless it is followed by real security changes. Now, from the beginning of the ceasefire process, disarmament has been treated by Trump's team and regional mediators as the central pillar of any durable settlement in Gaza. Detailed proposals describe a phased plan to remove rockets, heavy weapons, and tunnel network, and to place all remaining armed forces under the authority of the NCAG. In fact, the Board of Peace and NCAG both repeat the same formula: one authority, one law, and one weapon. Basically, in simpler terms, it means there cannot be multiple militias or independent armed groups deciding when to fire, when to stop, and how to police Gaza. Only forces accountable to the technocratic committee should carry guns. Remember, Israel has tied reconstruction funds and full withdrawal of its forces to verify disarmament by Hamas and other allied factions. Hamas, however, has time and again refused to give up its weapon, arguing that disarmament without strong guarantees about Israeli military behavior would leave Gaza actually exposed. In fact, the group has repeatedly said it will not surrender its arsenal until Israeli attacks stop and a broader political settlement is reached, even hinting that its armed wing could grow rather than shrinking after the war. Now, crucially, Hamas's statement on dissolving the government made no mention of disarmament, even though the issue is formally part of the second phase of the ceasefire deal. Now, that silence has reinforced fears among diplomats and Gaza residents alike that the weapon question is once again being pushed aside, even as the political structure is being reshaped. Now, Israel's leadership has reacted with open skepticism to Hamas's move. Foreign Minister Gideon Saar called the dissolution of the governing body a trick designed to prevent disarmament under Trump's Gaza plan. In fact, in a post on X, he warned that Hamas's apparent readiness to make room for a technocratic government was aimed at keeping its gun while shifting the face of governance. Well, Saar also said bluntly that as long as Hamas retain its weapon, any civilian government will of course operate as Hamas dictates, arguing that real control in Gaza will always belong to the actor that controls the armed men. He also insisted that Israel demands the full implementation of the Trump plan, whose core principle he listed as the disarmament of Hamas and all other terrorist organizations and the complete demilitarization of the Gaza Strip. Israeli officials have also warned Hamas's step as a stunt and warning that the group is trying to build a Hezbollah model in Gaza, a technocratic administration responsible for services like rubble collection, while Hamas continues as dominant military force. Now, Israeli security assessments cited in local media also argue that without a sustained years-long effort, full disarmament is very unlikely, and that even Hamas formally cedes governance, it will keep its grip on the Strip through its security and police network. Here it is also important to remember that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has also repeatedly stressed that complete disarmament and demilitarization must precede any major reconstruction or change to Gaza's status. Well, looking at all this, for Israel, the latest move changes very little. Until Hamas's weapons are surrendered or dismantled, the threat is seen as intact. The Trump-appointed Board of Peace responded to Hamas's announcement cautiously, saying it had taken note of the dissolution, but stressing that its assessment would be based on actions, not promises. It repeated that the core principle remains one authority, one law, and one weapon, signaling that symbolic changes in governance will not unlock the next phase of plan if armed groups remain outside a single legal framework. Well, this creates a structural conflict at the center of Gaza's transition. On one side stands an incoming technocratic committee backed by the United States and, most importantly, endorsed by UN Security Council, tasked with running civilian life and rebuilding the enclave. On the other stands Hamas, saying it will back from formal government but keeps its armed wing, its security network, and a strong presence inside ministries and local institutions. In fact, experiences from other places show how unstable such a mix can be. In Lebanon, for example, the coexistence of a recognized state and a powerful armed movement has often limited the government's ability to act independently. And if Hamas controls the gun, while technocrats handle paperwork, the real center of power may still lie with the group that can enforce decisions by force. Now, for ordinary Gazans, the risk is that they remain trapped between international plans and local realities. The ceasefire has reduced the scale of open fighting but has not answered the central question: who will decide on war and peace in the future? Well, at the end, as long as Hamas refuses to disarm and Israel insists that this armament is the starting point, not the final step, the political transition announced this week may amount to a change of labels rather than a true shift in power. Whether peace can truly prevail in Gaza will depend on whether governance and weaponry can be brought under one authority. Until that happens, Hamas giving up part of its formal government while keeping its gun and say over policing risk leaving the enclave in a fragile in-between state, neither fully at war nor securely at peace. Well, with that, it's a wrap on today's edition of From the News Desk. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm Yash Goyal signing off for Times Now Digital. Until next time, take care and keep watching this space for more such videos.